I remember the sound first. Tires screaming. A heavy thud. The world tipping over. Then my head hit the hard road. Everything went blurry. I tasted metal, blood, on my tongue. Lights and voices swirled. But one voice cut through like a cold knife. "Take her to the cheapest ward," my father said, like he was talking about a box of soap. "If she dies, less money wasted." The driver stammered and shook. My dad kept talking like nothing was wrong. He sounded like a man bargaining at a market, not a father saving his child. I tried to speak, but nothing came out. My body felt pinned to the ground. My legs felt like they were made of stone. My vision got small and dark. My mother's face leaned over me for a second, not worried, just looking disgusted. "You always bring trouble," she muttered. "Even the road hates you." The driver begged, "Sir, she needs an ambulance." Dad waved him away. "You hit her, you pay," he said. "Don't waste it on a fancy hospital. If she lives, she lives. If not, good riddance." Something in my chest moved. It was not fear of dying. It was a hard, hot anger. I realized then I was more afraid of staying alive under them, under their words and their small, mean rules. They left me in a public ward that smelled like old soap and cold floors. The tiles were cracked. The lights flickered. Nurses sighed before they touched me. I woke and slept in slow pieces for 2 days. No one from home came. No one called. A nurse told me, "Your father signed the papers and left. He didn't write an emergency contact." When I could sit up, there was a small plastic bag at my bed. Inside were my torn clothes, a few coins, and a note in my mother's handwriting: "Don't come home until you can pay your debt." Debt. I thought of the word and almost laughed, but my ribs were sharp with pain. A young doctor named Dr. Patel read my chart and said softly, "You were lucky. You have fractures and bruises, but no internal bleeding. Rest a few weeks." I whispered, "I can't afford that." She looked at me and didn't know what to say. I signed my own discharge papers 2 days later. I hobbled out with a cast on my leg and bruises down my back. The silence that followed felt heavy, but it turned into something else inside me, fuel. I reached the house and found it locked. My mother cracked the door and let it open a little. Her face looked annoyed, not surprised. "Oh, you survived," she said. "Guess the hospital wasn't cheap enough." My throat tightened. I was on crutches. The sun burned my face. Pain crawled under my skin. "You left me there," I said softly. My father came out behind her, his shirt neat, like he'd been to work. He nodded as if nothing had happened. "You shouldn't be walking in the road," he said. The driver was generous to stop. I told him to handle it cheap. "You're not worth a private room." My chest closed. I hoped they might feel bad. But their eyes were dry. Cold. "I could have died," I whispered. Dad shrugged. "Would have saved everyone trouble." My mother smirked and added, "At least your sister wouldn't have to share her room anymore." Brittany, my sister, leaned on the stair rail and scrolled her phone. "You still milking that accident thing? God, you're dramatic." I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell them they were monsters. Instead, I asked for my things. Dad blocked the hallway. "You don't live here anymore. We cleared your room. Sold your desk to pay the water bill." My fingers felt numb. The hurt inside was worse than the cuts and broken bones. Where was I supposed to go? Mom gave me fake sympathy. "You're an adult, aren't you? Maybe you'll learn not to be such a burden." Brittany laughed, "She'll crawl back. Just wait." That night I slept on a park bench. My leg throbbed. My shoulder screamed when I moved. I stared at the bright windows of my parents' house and felt like I had never belonged there. A small dog limped near me. One paw was swollen. I reached out slowly and it put its head on my arm. That broken little thing trusted me more than my family did. I whispered, "We're both disposable, huh?" The dog gave a soft sigh and slept. Days passed. I found a job sweeping floors at a tiny corner store. Mr. Duncan, the owner, didn't ask questions. He handed me a mop and left me to work. Every time I saw families walk by, something inside me twisted. But I stopped crying. Tears felt useless now. One evening Mr. Duncan said, "You're limping worse. You should rest." I said, "I can't afford rest." He looked at me long and said, "People like them don't know what they lost until there's nothing left of you for them to use." His words stayed with me. A week later I saw my father at the grocery store. He was buying imported wine and complaining about the price. He did not notice me at first. When he did, he smirked. "Guess you're doing charity work now," he said. I said, "I'm working." He leaned closer. "Working? You? The girl who cost me thousands in hospital bills? You didn't pay them?" I said nothing. He smiled thinly. "Still my fault you got hit. Still my fault you exist. You never change." That night I stared at my cheap ceiling and thought about how much of my life I had spent begging for their approval. Every apology, every small favor, every silence had been survival. But that night something inside me shifted. I didn't want to survive like that anymore. I wanted something else. I wanted them to feel the emptiness they had given me. I started to plan, not loud or wild, but quiet and steady. They thought I had disappeared into nothing. They thought I would fade. But I watched. I learned patience. I learned to stand without them. I needed time. I needed small, careful steps. Every morning before work I limped past the house just to remember what I was walking away from. The curtains were always drawn. The lawn was always neat, cut by someone else. The same shiny car sat in the driveway, the car that had once thrown me into the road. One afternoon I saw my father polishing that car and whistling. He saw my reflection in the window and froze. "You're still hanging around here," he said, voice sharp. "I walk this way to work," I said. He smirked, "Maybe you'll get hit again. Maybe you'll learn then." I didn't answer. I just looked at the car and memorized every scratch. Mr. Duncan started letting me run the register. He said, "You're good with people even when they are rude." I nodded. What I learned most was patience, the kind that burns quietly. A few weeks later I saw Brittany in a cafe, laughing with friends and showing off a designer purse. When she saw me she made a loud face. "Oh my God," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "You still alive?" Her friends giggled. I said, "Barely." She leaned closer and said, "You know what Dad says? You were born unlucky. You attract accidents." I looked at her calm and said, "Then I guess being near you is dangerous." Her smile faded. "You think you're better than us now?" she asked. "No," I said softly. "I just don't think about you at all." When I walked away, the quiet felt like a small victory. By the next month I had saved enough to move into a small apartment behind the store. I cooked my meals. I paid my rent. I stopped checking my phone for messages that would never come. For the first time in years I had peace, thin and fragile, but mine. One evening Mr. Duncan said, "Someone's looking for you." My mother stood in the doorway, her lipstick smudged and hair wild. Her voice shook, "Your father had an accident. He crashed the car. We need help. You have savings, right? For all we did for you." I could have laughed. The irony was sharp. I said, "You told me not to come home until I could pay my debt." I did, but I used it to live. Her face moved from confusion to anger. "How dare you talk to me like that? We're your parents." I said, "Were." She stammered, "Your father's hurt. I said quietly, then take him to the cheapest ward. For the first time she had no words. I closed the store door behind her and looked at the night sky. I didn't feel guilty. I didn't feel proud. I felt free. I knew this might not be the end. People like them don't break. They beg. I was ready to watch that. The next morning I walked past the house again. Not because I missed them, but because I needed to see what silence looked like from the outside. The car sat in the driveway, crumpled on one side, the windshield smashed. Dad's pride was gone. The house, once bright and loud, looked small and empty. 2 days later they came to the store. My mother first, with a shaky smile and eyes that kept looking at the counter. Dad followed on crutches, bruises on his arms and a brace on his neck. The man who told a stranger I wasn't worth saving now needed someone to help him walk. Evelyn, he said, as if my name was a task. We came to talk. I didn't move from behind the register. Mom's voice cracked, please, we lost everything. Repairs, bills. Your sister moved out. She says we're cursed. I bit the inside of my cheek to stop from laughing. Cursed or just getting what you gave? I thought. Mr. Duncan stepped out from the back and slipped into his office. He didn't have to say anything. He knew what I would do. Dad leaned on the counter and said, you can't keep holding grudges. We're family. I looked at him calm. Family, I said. You told a man not to waste money saving me. You called me a burden while I was bleeding. You sold my room to pay a bill. You made me pay rent for my own things. He shifted and said, you're exaggerating. Mom whispered, we were just scared. We didn't mean it. Scared of what? I asked. Scared that I'd live long enough to remember? They had no answer. For once, they were quiet. I took a slow breath and said, you should leave. Mom's hand trembled. Please, Evelyn. We don't have anyone else. I didn't look up. Then you'll learn what alone feels like, I said. They stood a moment, and I heard the shallow breath my father used to take when he paced outside my room, angry. Then they left. No yelling. No threats. Just the bell when the door closed. Weeks passed. The store grew busier. Mr. Duncan offered me full time and helped me enroll in night classes. He said, you've got a head for numbers. You could run your own business. I didn't tell him I already had one, my slow plan for justice. One evening a nurse called the store. Are you related to Mr. or Mrs. Hartman? She asked. The names hit me like a small stone. Not anymore, I said. I sat in my room after that, staring at the street light glow. I didn't cry. I didn't go to see them. Some things don't need an audience. A month later I walked past the house one last time. Weeds had taken over the lawn. The mailbox hung loose. The windows were dark. Inside I could almost see their mean words, the times they laughed when I tried to talk, the plates thrown in anger. I left one envelope on the porch. Inside the envelope was a hospital receipt. No note, no shouting. Just proof. Proof that even when I owed them nothing, I still had more kindness than they ever showed me. Then I walked away. The night air felt clean and cold. My limp was lighter. My chest did not hurt the way it had. The wind moved my hair and I felt something small and sharp, like a clear truth. They had taken everything they could take from me, all but one thing, the power to stop caring. For the first time in my life, that felt like the purest kind of revenge. Not loud. Not cruel. Just quiet and steady. I lived. I kept my hands clean. I gave myself back what they tried to steal, peace. That is the end of the story I want to tell. I was broken, but I learned how to stand. I was small, but I learned how to plan. I was hurt, but I learned how to be kind to myself and to the small things that trusted me. And when I walked away, I kept walking. Please like and subscribe for more videos. Also comment where you're watching from.